Welcome everyone to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh Wrestleplex. Now, here is pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Big M.
Oh,
Mark Tipton.
Big M. I do like that. By all means, do call me Big M Mark Tipton. Although, unlike that reference is not lost on me due to the events of the past week. I do appreciate you keeping it simple for me. Sometimes these fly over my head. This one obviously did not. Fortunately, I do get to keep my last name, unlike Big E did. But in any event, obviously the reference to Big M wants to discuss one of the kind of the subject or direction we want to go with this edition of the 30-minute Midas Touch podcast. And it's really something that interests me intently. I could talk about every week if we wanted to. It's kind of the idea of booking theory, or however you want to put it, or a strategy or something like that. What goes into the mind of a booker or creative, if people prefer that term nowadays, I suppose, such as creative is these days. You know, when you're trying to plan how you want to produce and project and present professional wrestling to an audience. How do you go about doing that? What's the thought process behind it? It's something that interests me endlessly every week when I watch. Well, what are they thinking? What are they wanting me as the audience to feel and react? And do I agree with it, quite frankly? And hey, I'm a member of the audience and we can be critical. That's okay. And so really this week we saw the WWE Championship won after a Money in the Bank cash-in by Big E, formerly Langston. But that interests me immensely, and that, among with some other things going on in professional wrestling, I want to talk about from a booking mindset, and here we have someone that I can ask all these questions to.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, when you're talking about booking, there's really two different types of bookers. There's short-term bookers and long-term bookers. You know what I mean? Short-term bookers are fabulous in the moment. You know, they come up with some amazing things the day of, and, you know, that thing, maybe call audibles and things like that, which is amazing. Long-term bookers, in my opinion, are the best bookers in wrestling, because they're not thinking next week. Well, they are, but they're thinking next week, but they're also thinking next year, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. And that's kind of been my thought process. Now, the best of both worlds always happens when you have two of those bookers together. You have a long-term booker, and then you have an assistant booker that's a short-term booker. And then they work together, you know. And that's been the case throughout wrestling history. So with the Big E thing, obviously, you know, it's something that it's been on people's minds. How long ago was it when he won the Money in the Bank?
I'm trying to remember, was it June or July? When they had that pay-per-view?
Sure.
It's been relatively a short time period.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's been on our minds. We knew he had it, and he's hinted at it a couple times, but it's always fun to see the cash in. That's, you know, something really cool that WWE's created over the last 10, 15 years, is that cash in. And it's led to a lot of moments, and we had a big moment this week.
Well, I guess for history's sake, I'm trying to recall exactly. There is some. I have heard both Chris Jericho and or Eric Bischoff at different times claim credit for the invention of the Money in the Bank concept. I don't know. I do not remember specifically who it was, and it really is not that important who came up with the idea. But it is a great idea. It creates great moments. But I am someone who has become a little bit less enthralled with the WWE over recent weeks. And you hit on something that has stuck out to me with regard to short-term versus long-term. When I watched the events of Monday night, it looked very short-term, and it's something they've been known for doing, or rumored to have been doing quite a bit lately. But it seemed to me to be kind of somewhere in between long term and short term, and I'll try to express why. Because the Money in the Bank, and I'll let you go with this. If you go over your favorite Money in the Bank cash-ins, were they announced prior to the beginning of the show?
No, absolutely not. That's the whole key to it, is the surprise factor of it, you know. So yeah, that's a huge. You know, it's all about surprises. It's all about, you know, you want to do things that people don't see coming, and even when they do see it coming, you throw enough dips and curves in there that they forget about it and like think, well, maybe I'm wrong, and then you give it to them anyway. You know what I mean? And that's an art form in itself, and that's what's been lost over in professional wrestling. You know, over the last, I'd say, 30 years. You know.
Okay, I guess what bothers me is because for those of you who may not have been aware, Big E went on Twitter prior to several hours prior to Monday Night Raw, and announced for the public to know he was going to cash in that night. Made it no uncertain terms. I'm cashing in tonight. Now, if I had to guess, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, I happen to know that this week was also the beginning of Monday Night Football season.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that they were thinking, hey, this is something we can do to try to hold on to some of the audience that they may risk losing up against Monday Night Football?
I don't know. I mean, Raw's been going against Monday Night Football forever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really think, and that's what we talk about here at Pro Wrestling Mid-South, is we're trying to draw wrestling fans. You know what I mean? Like, so what? There's a football game in town. So what? There's this going on. If they're wrestling fans, then they're going to want to come see us. So I don't know. Like WWE, I don't, and that may be their thought process because there's a lot of TV heads in there now, and that's kind of how they think. But I mean, like my thought process is, let's just give them professional wrestling. Let's tell our stories and do this and build all of our guys, and then the people will come. If you build it, they will come.
Yes, and well, my thought is, well, if you're going to announce the cash in advance, this is where I'm saying it's in between. Why not announce a week or more in advance when you could mention it on television? The way it was announced, I don't think any WWE broadcast had put that information out there. I think it was exclusively on social media. And
I don't think they didn't even retweet it or anything, did they? I mean,
I do not know for sure.
But I don't think they did.
But I don't think so. And so you're really dependent on word of mouth. And Twitter, as popular as it is a very limited, I forget how many subscribers they have. But it's a relatively, now, the internet on YouTube and websites, spread it further beyond that because they're all people who would watch Twitter intently. But to me, it's like if you're going to do that and you want to try to draw an audience away, announce a week or more in advance where you can mention it on a broadcast with millions of viewers. But this way you don't get the surprise factor and you don't get the build-up of promotion and advertising. You get something in between that is less satisfactory. Is that fair for me to say as a member of the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm obviously, I don't like how social media tips their hand at professional wrestling. Like, we know who's going to sign where before anything. Like, to me, there should be a kayfabe clause in everyone's contract where if you get caught, talking about this stuff, you forfeit half your contract. I bet that would stop a lot of that shit right there. But, and stuff like that, too. Like, Big E saying, I'm going to catch in 9. Whether I seriously doubt WWE told him to do that. Or they might have. I don't know. It's possible.
I kind of think they did. I think you mentioned. I mentioned the word creative. There are many people involved in the decision-making process at WWE who are not, and I'm going to say this generically, wrestling people. No. They're TV people. Right. They're writers who worked on soap operas or sitcoms or something in Hollywood that
the
are
10th man on a comedy series that went nowhere.
Yes.
And for some reason, he's the lead writer.
To write because they're writing television. They're not writing professional wrestling.
Yeah, I don't, I don't agree with that thought process at all. Like, professional wrestling is its own unique and special art form in itself, and it needs to be treated as such. Just because you're good at writing a sitcom doesn't mean you're good at writing wrestling. Just because you're good at writing a novel doesn't mean you're good at writing a sitcom. It's all relative to what experience you have, and like you've said creative a couple times, and that's a word that kind of bugs me too, because that's this WWE, lifestyle has kind of, pushed that down our throats. Creative,
Yes.
creative, and it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not creative. It's booking. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's wrestling booking.
Yeah, there's a booker
Yeah,
who
but
books the show.
yeah, creative is. I don't. I don't know what creative. I don't know where that term came from. Is it a movie term maybe, or a film or a television term?
I think
or
it's
what?
taken. I think it's taken from television.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's been my big gripe about WWE for many years is, they're not presenting themselves as professional wrestling or as a legitimate sport like we need to be. They're projecting themselves as like an entertainment entity, and like that's what they do. Instead of having, let me put it this way: if a kid can throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, everybody in the major leagues knows where that kid is,
Right.
and is going to try to get him. But that's not how professional wrestling works. No matter how good you are at professional wrestling, it doesn't matter, because basically they're just going to have a casting call.
Right.
You know what I mean? And find what they want. They're gonna bring in 30 guys to NXT and take a look at all of them, and then like try to figure out, who fits within their mold, or who from the former NFL that have torn their PCLs are gonna be the next big thing.
Oh, you just struck a nerve with me. And I'm trying to remember the gentleman's first name. WWE's hired a gentleman. His last name is Khan. Obviously,
Mark Khan.
Mark Khan. I wanted to say Nick, and so it's Mark Khan. He was doing an interview on, I want to say, Bleacher Report. I may be mistaken on that, with Ariel Helwani.
Mm-hmm.
He was extolling this open tryout they had, I believe, in Las Vegas, and how they found all these interesting people there, or superstars of the making, and was in this interview inviting, hey, if you're interested, hey, get in touch with us. And he was making it sound as though becoming a WWE level professional wrestler was something that could be accomplished over a matter of weeks. Hey,
Right.
we're open. Like Hollywood has casting calls, and they find the proverbial, find a new star. A star is born, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They can find someone and, hey, just go out there and act naturally. That kind of thing. And that's what he made it sound like, as opposed to something that takes years of practice and preparation to get on the big stage like WWE. And that incensed me when I heard it.
Yeah, I wasn't happy when I heard that either. But and I'll go back to this, and I don't, maybe it was the first or second season of Tough Enough. I can't remember which one it was. The one where Boogeyman was on there, right? Where they're doing these kind of open tryouts in the beginning, and there was one guy on there that said he was super athletic, blah blah blah, and Jim Ross goes, "Can you do a spin-a-rooney?" And the guy goes, "What's a spin-a-rooney?" And Jim Ross goes, "You don't watch the product? You don't know what we're talking?" He just lit into the guy, right? And then the guy kind of picked up on what it was, and then he did it, and he did it amazingly. He actually did the continuous spin-a-rooney where, like, he never even...
Okay.
Like, it was 10 times better than Booker's.
No,
but I mean,
breakdancing.
it was an actual thing, and, like, he could do it, but at the same time, he doesn't understand wrestling.
Right.
And that's kind of what my thought process is. If you're not a wrestling fan and you don't understand professional wrestling, or at least have the building blocks to do that, then to me it's a disservice to yourself. It's a disservice to the business, obviously, and it hurts us overall.
So So in my parlance, I would say he was a tremendous athlete, a talent,
Yeah.
not a wrestling guy.
No, not a wrestling guy at all. I mean,
And that's something that comes as a member of the audience. When I see this, it comes screaming through the screen at me and slaps me in the face. And it angers me every time I see it. Oh, yeah, he's a great talent. And he could be something. Well, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But at the WWE level,
Yeah.
I need a wrestling guy to understand what he's doing. Being able to do it is great, but knowing what to do and when to do it, because you've talked about timing in the ring,
Mm-hmm.
that is something that is learned ultimately, is it fair to say that the way to learn how to do this is to do this?
Yeah, I mean, we can train a guy and give him all the reps that he needs and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, he has to be able to perform in front of a live crowd to really hone what he's doing. Because it's completely different. Taking a body slam in training is completely different from taking a body slam in front of people. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a huge issue. Like, and thing too, there's been plenty of guys that came from the world of football, or they came from the world of UFC, or they came through the world of whatever, and did well with professional wrestling. The difference is that a lot of them, the ones that didn't have any indication about professional wrestling before that actually did well with it is a very, very, very small percentage.
Yes.
It is the exception to the rule and not the rule, right? But as we talked about before, the lifelong wrestling fans, you know what I mean? Those, like, I don't mind a guy that grew up loving wrestling, but was also a star football player and got his break in the NFL. Then he tore out his knee and decided, well, maybe I should try this. Yeah, because he obviously liked it too. You know what I mean? But my problem is when you go, when you take a guy and you go, who's your favorite wrestler? Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan? He goes, who are they?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've met people like that have no idea who Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair are. How the fuck is that even possible to us, right? But, like, in some cases, those are guys that actually get jobs.
Yes. It frustrates me immensely, and I use the term wrestling guy. And let me try to make this more specific, and I don't want to hear a tirade on WWE too much. That might not be what I should do. I want to make it specific on Big E. When I look at what happened here, and we mentioned it's been a couple months. I forget the exact date when he became the Money in the Bank title holder. But at the time I saw it, I thought, I thought the Bobby Lashley cash-in was what was coming. At the time, Bobby Lashley was attacking Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston on television and beating them down severely. He was on SmackDown at the time, but now he has this golden ticket. He can go to Raw and be a part of it anytime he wants to. And I'm beginning to think anybody can go anywhere again. The brand split doesn't seem to be as solid as it used to be, but I thought that was the direction they were going, but it just kind of went away. And it leads me to believe Vince McMahon has become known for, quote-unquote, tearing up scripts on the day of the show. It is something that's referenced often. I don't know if it actually happens, but the way the show is produced sometimes makes me wonder.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's such a cluster sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, now, the right way to do, like, when you announce a cash-in is the way John Cena did it. He did it the ultimate white meat babyface way. It's like, I don't want to sneak up on anybody and get them when they're not ready. I want their best. I want to beat the best. So I'm going to use my cash in on this date against this guy.
And my recollection is that he did it on Raw the week before.
Right. Yeah. And but when I said, when you tip your hand on Twitter or any other social media, it just hurts the product overall because one, realistically, if you were going to cash in, right, your biggest advantage is the surprise factor. And if you go ahead and announce that, then you take that out of the equation, and then you kind of fuck yourself, right? If this is all legitimate, and that's my point is, people don't think about that, that line of thought anymore. As far as professional wrestling goes, it's wrestling; they can do whatever they want. No, it's not. I mean, that's why we have a fraction of the audience that we had 20, 30 years ago, is because we quit trying to make it believable and decided it was all just television anyway, which I completely disagree with.
All right. I guess I'll try to get what I'm getting at. I'm thinking for the good of the talent, in this case Big E, I'm trying to decide, is this a long-term breaking decision to put the championship on Big E, or is it a short-term one? Is this going to be something to where this is a championship reign that is quickly forgotten? It was done just to try to spur ratings on one particular Monday night because Monday Night Football was beginning, and we're going to quickly have the championship move on to someone else, and this will be, a moment, but then is quickly forgotten, and ultimately works to the disservice of the talent, in this case, Big E.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a hodgepodge of things like that. I mean, you can't look a gift horse in the mouth though. Like they want to make you WWE champion. You can't go well.
Oh no, I'm not criticizing Big E.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just for those of you out there, I just want to make sure they understand that.
Thank you.
Like me and Bobby Eaton, who you knew was a huge part of my mentorship. We would talk about things. Well, why was this guy pushed, or why was that guy pushed? He wasn't this, or he wasn't that. And Bobby would go, I mean, what's a guy supposed to do? Say no? I mean,
Right. No.
they're giving him opportunity to do
Sure.
whatever. Eric Watts is a good example. Like Eric Watts was not ready for the spot that he was in. It was nepotism at its
Sure.
finest, but
Politics.
but what's he gonna do? Is he gonna say, "No, Daddy, don't put me in that spot"?
Well, sure.
I don't want to make a living at wrestling. I mean, so. But back to the Big E thing, yeah. I mean, and that's short term, long term, like we're talking about, And sometimes short term stuff goes better than you expect, and that changes the booking. We've had several cases where we made a decision and it got over a lot better than we expected it to, or it created some kind of new tension or new whatever within the story frame, and like we're okay, we need to ride this, and that's what wrestling is it's really riding momentum.
Yeah. I guess one of the things that stuck out was the way Big E cashed in made me think that they were leaving room to quickly put it back on Bobby Lashley if they selected to. Right. With the knee injury at ringside immediately before Big E comes out and that kind of thing. I do credit them. I thought the sequence of events that led up, I thought it was well put together. They logically explained why there were a number of people at ringside when this happened, and how each one wasn't going to be a factor in the outcome.
Right.
And I thought that made sense, just logically speaking. But I'm concerned that this is going to be a flash in the pan, and then Big E will quickly move back down the roster,
Totem pole.
the totem pole. There's a much better way to put it. Because it reminds me of what I've seen when individuals have come, say, from NXT to a main roster event, and
that's the difference between changing bookers.
Yes.
That's from going from ECW to WWE, from Paul Lee to Vince was night and day.
Right.
Right. Same thing with Cornette to, whoever. See what I'm saying? Like, all different bookers have different mindsets and stuff like that. So like, and I've said this before too. Like, there's guys that I see a lot of talent in, I see a lot of value in that other bookers don't. You know what I mean? And vice versa. There's some people that they push. I'm like, why the hell would you ever book that guy? You know what I mean? So like, you're talking about the call-ups from NXT, and that's kind of what happens. Like Triple H has built these guys
right
as this.
Yeah, this is this is a big star. This is a monster. Whatever
Right.
they's presented them as, and then they come, and then it just all
fizzles away.
And I'm watching what.
See, like, and that's where, like, me as a booker, when I see something like that, it's like, if I'm bringing someone in, unless I just want to completely change everything about them, like, I'm going to take what they do well, and then I'm going to polish and pick things and try to make them better for our product. You know what I mean? And I've done that with several guys, but it's like, you have to be willing to make those kind of changes too. But like you said, most bookers don't do that. They just kind of do whatever, like, even if they don't have the talent with the skill set to do what they want to do, they do it anyway, and it fails, and then they try to blame the wrestlers when it's actually your fault because you thought they could do it and they couldn't.
Okay, I want to, in the moments we have remaining, try to turn this to another current event and use it to discuss the booking mindset here. When I look at AEW, on the other hand, one of the things they have done very well, at least recently, is they have told me at least a week in advance things I can look forward to on the next week's show.
Right.
Now, this week, they made a decision they are going to have Bryan Danielson have his first ring appearance next week on Dynamite. Now, this is an event at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York City, so obviously it's something that they consider a premium. But they've announced that his first appearance in ring is going to be there on Dynamite rather than at a pay-per-view the way they did with CM Punk, for example.
Not only is it on live television, but it's against
their
champion, their top guy. So it's like you've pretty much just, ex-nayed 6 months, a year of booking, right out from under yourself. You know what I mean? And really, you kind of painted yourself into a corner, like you said, like the main next week. That's what you talk about, right? That's a huge thing in professional wrestling. What's going to happen next week, or what's going to happen at the pay-per-view, or what's going to happen here? You build to the big moments and stuff like that. AEW, I'll be honest with you, they're kicking ass right now. You know what I mean? They're doing some pretty good stuff, and I've been watching the last couple of weeks, and I don't love everything obviously, but like there's been some really good stuff. But they are hot-shotting. It's the mother of all hot shots right now because like next week is like every match that they've been building is all happening on those two shows.
It's almost like a pay-per-view event on television.
Yeah. I mean, at least. I mean, yeah, it just seems like in a lot of cases, like it's like overkill. Obviously, every match literally they could take all those matches that they've announced, and they could be a main event on Dynamite or Rampage,
for a month,
yeah,
maybe. Well, several weeks, if not a month.
Well, there's probably 12 matches that they've announced, right? So
a great number.
Yeah, so that's 6 weeks. 2 shows a week, so 6 weeks. That's 6 weeks they could get out of all that stuff, but they're giving it all. They're giving it to us all in one night. God bless them, but good luck.
Okay, well here comes my tinfoil hat. As I mentioned, WWE, I was concerned their thinking might have been affected by Monday Night Football. AEW, is it possible that their thinking is affected by the fact that this event is taking place in New York City? New York City is synonymous with the WWE back for 50, 60 years, however long it is. It was often referred to as going to New York to go to WWE. And they're having an event this is in Queens at the tennis stadium where the U.S. Open is held. So it's in New York City. So you're in WWE. Do you think that maybe AEW is trying to put on a major event there to kind of make a statement to the WWE?
No, I don't think it's actually to the WWE. Even though, like you said, New York is always synonymous with the WWE. I really think they're more or less trying to capitalize on the Ring of Honor stuff. Because Daniel Bryan was a huge part of Ring of Honor, and he had a huge following in Chicago and New York and Philly and places like that. So I really think it is if we're going to do this big show in New York, Daniel Bryan would be a good focal point of it because, like I said, he has the history there,
All right. Maybe I'm a little bit too conspiratorial.
I just don't think and Tony Khan said this too, they don't really care about WWE. It was like they want to beat them, but at the same time, they're just trying to create their own thing. So, I don't see him being vindictive enough to go, well, I'm going to run the same town as, that kind of. I think they're just, literally, they're aloof to the fact that they're in WWE territory.
I guess what kind of partially brought me into that was Christian in his comments clearly referenced Adam Cole's history as part of NXT/WWE and used that to great effect to kind of take a shot at him and build the animosity between the sides as they were promoting an upcoming Rampage match they were going to have. And so it kind of, and they have done this before, where they've made direct references to WWE on the show.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe this has affected their mindset, and they're wanting to say, hey, here we are in the biggest city in the world, city never sleeps. We want to put our best foot forward and put on a show to draw attention to our product.
Right. I loved the Christian line. It caught me off guard. And I popped hard on that.
But everybody understood exactly what he was saying.
The only problem I have with that is, but this isn't Christian, but Kenny Omega when the Wednesday Night Wars began, made a comment about developmental, like, oh, we're going to go head to head with developmental, and then they end up pretty much running neck and neck with developmental. You know what I mean? So, I mean, like, that makes you just look like an idiot.
Yes.
When you put over the fact that they're supposed to be lower tier and then you're not even beating lower tier every week, then what does that make you? You know what I mean? Christian, though, on the other hand, it kind of looked, it almost felt like he knows Adam Cole's pretty good, but he's like, he's not as good as he thinks he is. Right. So I'm going to take him down a peg right now.
Sure.
And I completely understand that.
And in the context.
Yeah, made perfect sense in the context because, I like Adam Cole. I think he's super talented. I think he does way too much shit. Way too much Canadian destroyers, way too many super kicks, way too many whatever. And he's 170 pounds, 180 pounds at the most. I just don't buy him as, a main event level guy. You know what I mean? But he can be a great hand on the show, a la X-Pac, or something like that. But, like, to push him as, okay, this is the best wrestler in the world. He's not fucking Kurt Angle. He's not fucking Lesnar. He's not The Rock. He's not Austin. Who is, but at the same time, like, he's definitely not going to be it.
Yeah, I do mention that mindset of slowing. Well, we talked about less is more. And I think that's what you were describing with Adam Cole as far as do less stuff. And the interesting thing to me is I thought within the context of Dynamite, I believe it was, I saw Dan Lambert of America Top Team really voice that point of view. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to what he said, but it was like some of the things I'm not thrilled with AEW about. He took it over the top, obviously,
right?
But he pointed it out on their program.
If you follow my Facebook at all, Dan Lambert has pretty much stole my gimmick because he's saying all the shit that I say. He gets to say it in AEW with a live microphone, and he's kind of my spirit animal with that sense because he's been kicking ass. Like, I love his promos, and they ring true to me for sure. And then yes, he went overboard. Everyone went overboard this week with promos. Like, every promo had the word shit in it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure GD was said somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had Bryan Danielson doing it.
Yeah. Jericho said pussies.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you can't. You're only going to get so far doing that kind of shit. It looks Bush League, and, like, sponsors are not going to flock to that. You know what I mean? And they're like, oh, well, they want the demographic. They want the 18 to 49. Well, okay, but does that mean you have to ignore the other demographics to get it? You know what I mean? Like, your goal is to get a broad range of people, stuff like that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, WWE still beat them overall.
Yes.
But they lost the demo, the 18 to 49 demo, and that's what we wanted. That's what we want. Who gives if you get 700,000 views and they get 2 million, then what does it matter?
Well, okay, you've wandered in my tinfoil hat again. Is it possible that the thinking to AEW is that the AE may stand for Attitude Era?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if you live the Attitude Era, then you recognize the fallout after the Attitude Era. And I've talked about this before. When I was 16, 17, 18 years old when the Attitude Era was going on, and I loved it. Obviously, I was that kid, ECW, everything. I loved the whole shebang. But once I got in the business, and I've been in the business for about 5 or 6 years, and, like, when I broke in, there was like 30 of us that broke in the business trying to get in the business together, right? And then 5, 6, 7 years later, all of a sudden we're looking around. There's like one guy, there's two guys. There's just nobody, and I couldn't fucking figure it out. What was going on? I finally put it together that when I was 16, 17, 18, those kids were 9, 10, 11, 12. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And parents were turning off wrestling and wouldn't let them watch it because of the vulgarity.
Sure. And
they didn't grow up wrestling fans like we did. So then, and like I said, once you saw that and saw it play out like that, it completely changed my mindset on the Attitude Era. Like, as much as I love it, as far as it still has the old school aspect of everybody on this card is important. Everyone's a star just because they're here, that kind of thing. That was a great point of it. But yeah, the overall cussing, the vulgarity, the nudity, all that kind of stuff, like, eventually it ran its course and hurt the business as much as it helped
Right.
it.
It had undeniable short-term financial success,
Yes.
but long-term consequences. And I know I'm consequences because I'm sure we're over at this point.
Yes, sir. We're almost at 35 minutes this week, but we got going on this topic, and it was a good topic. So for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and my co-host Big M, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.